Good morning. Today's lesson will be on JSON. To get started, we're going to open up our web browser and open up a few websites. I'm going to do a search for JSON. First site we're going to open is jason.org. This is a good resource to check out. There's some railroad diagrams to show you how things work. Another website to look at would be this W3 Schools site. You'll see there's some examples of JSON here. A third site would be the wiki page for JSON. There's a good example, some good documentation on it. Here's another good sample of some JSON. We're going to go through an example of this here shortly. One more site we'll open is jasonlint.com, and this is where we will paste some JSON and it will allow us to validate to see how we've done. I'm also going to open up a terminal session. I'm going to put these in some different desktops so we can bounce around. And I'm going to open up my brackets as well. And we'll put brackets in this third desktop. So first thing we're going to do is open up our terminal session. We have a folder called Full Stack where we're keeping all of our work. Inside this folder I have a subfolder called JSON Lesson. I'm going to move into that folder, and this is where we're going to keep our files. Right now this folder is empty. Let me make it empty real quick here. So what we want to do is create the first file we're going to create is a patient.json file. This will be the file that will contain the text that is our JSON. So let's do a touch patient.json. JSON files always end with the letters JSON. Create that file. We'll also create another file called program.js, which is for JavaScript file. This is a file we're going to use to run. We'll use Node to run this program.js, which will access and demonstrate how to access our patient.json file. So let's move over to our JSON lesson. We can open up the JSON patient.json file and we can start typing. JSON always begins by opening and closing your braces. Next thing we can do is we can create a property name or a field name. And so this is a patient, so we're going to say patients have first name, and we would put a colon, and then we'd actually put the value of the first name, and we're going to say this is Mickey. We would put a comma because patients also have a last name, a second field, and the value of the last name would be Mouse. And so this in its entirety is a valid JSON file. Let's confirm that by copying this, and we're going to move over to our JSON linter, paste it in here, and we're going to validate this. And you can see, sure enough, I did this correctly. Let's do it wrong a couple of ways and see what happens. If I were to take the quotes off of here, let's say I forget the quotes. Let's see how this validates now. We'll copy that over here, and we'll validate that. And sure enough, it says, oh, that's wrong. Let's say that we use single quotes around the property names. What's it going to do to us there? So you can see that these need to be double quotes. The field names need to be double quotes. Let's say we forgot to put quotes around the actual value here. What's it going to do to us here? Is that valid JSON? Surely not. Because Mickey's a string, we need to put Mickey in quotes. There are cases where we don't have to put quotes if they're booleans or null and so forth, and we'll go through that shortly. So here we have some valid JSON. Let's go back to our brackets, or our file is, and let's make it, put our quotes back around here. And so now I've got some valid JSON. What I want to be able to do is write a program that would access this data. So to do that, I need to go back. I thought I'd done this. I didn't hit enter on this, did I? So now I got my touch. I created a file called program.js. Now in my program.js file, I'm going to create a variable because we're going to run this in Node named patient, which is suitable, and we're going to set that equal to require, and we're going to say /patient. And what Node will do is Node will go out to that folder and include that patient.json file in this file for us, and then we can say console.log, and we can say patient.last name, like so. And I can save that. Now I can come to my command prompt and I can say node program.js, and sure enough, my console log shows me the word mouse. So I've done well. Let's go to the JSON file. Let's split the screen so we can get both of these on here, and we'll get that one off. We'll put this one over here, and now we'll just kind of play a little bit. What happens if I were to not put quotes here? Not only is it not valid in the validator, what you'll see is it won't work here in our Node program as well. Okay, it says unexpected token, and the unexpected token is we are missing our quotes here. So often if you miss your quotes, that's the end result. Another thing you can do is you could format this differently. You could say, I don't like it looking like that. I want it to look like this, for example. This will work just fine in Node, and you can see that there's no problem. However, when we put that in our validator, it will be valid X, it will be valid JSON. However, the validator will fix it and make it look like it should. Okay, and so we want to, and this is a more readable format is the issue. And so let's write our JSON so it's in a more readable format. I'm going to copy this back in here so I have the whole thing here. Oops. Control A, Control V. Okay, so next thing we can do is we can add some more properties. The properties are separated by commas. And so let's just say we have a property called married, M-A-R-R-I-E-D, colon, and a married is a Boolean value. So I could say false, or I could say true. And notice these are not in quotes. This is a data type it's defined in JSON, and so it's true or false. And so let's save that. Let's go validate it and make sure I'm not lying to you. Stick that in here and validate that, and it's valid. Let's put this, say capital T. What happens if I say capital T? It doesn't. A valid value is lowercase true. So capital T does not work. As we could also prove that false will work, but a capital F will not work. Okay, so just a note that this is a Boolean value, should not be in a string, and lowercase t or lowercase f in the case of a false. Next thing we can talk about is you can group things, like let's say patients have an address, and so we would just say that's the property name and there's a colon, but the address involves 3 or 4 different pieces of information. So what we can do is we can kind of group that. And so what I'm doing is I'm going to say city is Disney, and the state is Florida, like this. So you can see where I've composed the address into a kind of a sub-object here. Okay, and I'll just put one more thing. I'll do comma, and then I'll say zip 4444. Now, what we'll do is I just want to verify that I'm doing a good job, and I can put this in over here and validate it, and I've done fine. Okay. Now, I'd like to be able to use that in my program. How do I address how do we use this dot notation to access this, for example, the city right here? Well, I would say dot address dot city. So now when I run my program, my node program, I've got an, and so I did do something wrong. What did I do? Patient.address. I'm not seeing it. Okay, let's just, I'm not sure what I did wrong. Patient.address. You know, probably what I didn't do is I probably didn't save this. I didn't save my file, and now I did save it. Now, and here's another thing: we can actually show the address, and it will show the entire. If I just say address, it shows the entire JSON subobject, and then, as we did before, we can drill into it and just take one small chunk of it, which is that should give me the city, and there's the Disney. Now, another thing that's important that we can do is we can create collections. For example, patients may have to have some tests, as in plural, as in more than one test. There's a collection of tests that we can model here. So I would create a property called tests, and what I would do is I would open and close my square brackets to accomplish this, and then I would begin to create objects inside of that. And so my first one would be, I would say there's a test name, and let's say the test name is NGCT, and then there would be a result, excuse me, and I would say the result is negative for that. And then I would again say the second test would be test name, and the result would, or the test name would be cystic fibrosis, and the result would be negative, for example. And so now what I've done is I have two tests in a collection, and I know it's a collection because there's these square braces, and there's two objects separated by commas. So I have two tests. Each test has a test name and a result. Now let's make sure this is valid. Make sure I haven't made a mistake. Copy that over here to my validator and validate, and you can see I've done fine, and my format's good because it didn't change anything. There's lots of ways to write this. For example, I could like put this down on this line. What you'll find is that if you take your JSON over and you validate it and it gets moved, you need to write it this way. Use that format, please. Now the question is, how do I address these tests in my node program? Well, what we do is we say patient.tests, and then we address it with our square brackets, and we can kind of index into it. If I say 0, that's going to be the first index, the index of the first record, which would be the NGCT. So what I would expect here, if I would expect the JSON for that first test, and let's run it and see what it looks like. And so you can see this is the whole JSON subobject of that first test. I can switch this to 1, and that would be the second test, because this is index based. 0 is the first, 1 is the second. So if I save that and look at that, okay, and I can also go and be more specific, and I can just look at the result of that first or the second result. That would say negative. Okay. So another idea that we should address is the idea of nulls. Let's say we have an SSN field, and but it was not provided to us. If the Social Security number is not provided to us, we would want to say null, and that we don't know what it that value is. So when I look at the value of the SSN in my program, what you'll see is it says it's null. And null is a valuable thing. It means I don't have it. Because I don't have it, if I leave this out, if I say, okay, I don't even have it in my JSON, what is this value going to be, is the question. And basically it's undefined, which means there's no social security number field in the JSON at all. And that's different than the value of it being null. So I'm going to put this back, and because this has more meaning, because the value is there, the field is there, I just don't know what the value is because it was not provided to me. And that provides meaningful information. Okay, another idea is that I could have an age, and an age I would want to use an int. Notice I don't put, with the null and the int, I don't put quotes around it. Let's see how this comes out with the age. And so you can see I've made a mistake. I didn't put my comma right there, excuse me. And so right here you can see the age is 45. Another idea is that I can name these whatever I want. I could do this. I could all put these in uppercase, but that would be substandard. Mostly what I see is that these are in camel cased or all lowercase. So most of the time I see field names typed this way. Occasionally I see them this way, but not very often. And sometimes they'll just be all lowercase. I prefer to use camel case, which means I have a first name. It's basically two words. The first word is lowercase. The second word is uppercase, the first letter. And so here I have a nice example of a JSON file. And you can see they can get fairly complicated, and you can model complicated things with JSON. And I have a very simple program here. It fits very nicely in a Node program. So I believe that's all for today.